Near Brentwood. It'll be the site of a major scientific experiment.
Outdoor experiments are set to begin on frostban. That's the genetically engineered bacteria we've been telling you about that's supposed to keep plants from freezing. Advanced Genetic Sciences of Oakland has been testing frostban in these greenhouses for months. Now they have the go-ahead from the EPA to spray it on open fields. One of the three possible sites is this field in Brentwood in Contra Costa County. People who live near there say they have some reservations, but no real objections.
I think that it's safe, and I think people have to realize it's just something new, and you can't be afraid of everything new.
One thing that I would like to know more about is what about the insects that might carry this bacteria, and farm machinery that might transport it.
It seems to me it'd be better to test it in a field that's way out in the desert or somewhere where it wouldn't be close to a community like Contra Costa County.
The other two possible test sites are in San Benito County near Hollister. The spraying will start sometime in April.
Frostban, the genetically altered bacteria that's supposed to protect crops from cold weather. This week, the state gave its approval for the first open-air testing in Contra Costa County on a strawberry patch in Brentwood. But as Sandra Stricker found out, frostban is still getting an icy reception from people opposed to the project.
The people against testing frostban out of doors say they will sue to stop it. A similar lawsuit brought another project like this to a complete halt near Tule Lake. Opponents to frostban claim not enough tests have been done to make sure that it's safe.
The EPA has allowed Advanced Genetic Sciences to test this in the environment when there have been virtually no tests done to determine health effects.
The company wants to start testing this weekend. If a lawsuit is filed, that could force them to postpone. Right now, the earliest they could start testing here would be this Friday at dawn. The company says 4 years of testing has turned up nothing to indicate that frostban is dangerous.
This experiment has been subject to more regulation, more testing than any other experiment for agriculture.
A petition signed by 1,500 residents against testing frostban in Contra Costa County was presented by a coalition of environmental groups who demanded to see the president of the company.
You want the president to come down here?
He won't be down.
Why not?
If you'd like to leave it, I'd be happy to
Do you have a
take it
statement
out.
from him?
Meanwhile, out in Brentwood, machines to monitor the site are in place. The strawberry patch where the testing is supposed to be done is ready, and some of the people who usually work the fields nearby are worried.
A lot of people here they really don't know what's going on, how dangerous it is for them, for their children, their unborns.
A lot of us don't know the day that they're doing it exactly, and I want to take my children out of the house and kind of out of the area when they do it, just in case.
In Brentwood, Sandra Stricker, Channel 5 Eyewitness News.
Opponents of the testing are planning to file their lawsuit tomorrow in Sacramento. The mayor of Brentwood, Catherine Palmer, told Eyewitness News she considers the lawsuit frivolous and said the city has no plans to pull out of its agreement for the testing of frostban.
Now, Channel 7 News at 6, a Bay Area tradition, with Pete Wilson, Suzanne Saunders, Dr. Dina Dell, meteorologist Pete Giddings, and Mike Berry with sports.
Good evening, everyone. From the very beginning, there have been protesters. Each time, scientists have tried to test genetically altered bacteria outside the laboratory. Environmental groups and even some farmers have rallied and railed against the whole idea. Now the scientists are preparing an open-air test of frostban in Contra Costa County. And again, the protests. Now, Bill Van Amberg reports tonight that if the protests fail this time, frostban could be sprayed as early as Friday.
It's historic precedent both scientifically, politically, and in the regulatory sense. And that is why government agencies should make a thorough and complete review of this process. Without an EIR, that is not possible. This is setting a bad precedent if it goes ahead without an EIR.
This gathering was an impassioned, though small, 11th-hour attempt by concerned groups to ban the test of frostban, which is all but guaranteed now for the end of the week on this Brentwood field. It will be the first such release of genetically altered organisms into the environment. And while the federal government, local governments, and now the state have said okay, this group brought petitions to show 1,500 citizens near Brentwood say wait. No state environmental impact report was done, and more information is needed before release.
If you compare the tests that have been required of advanced genetic sciences with those required for any chemical pesticide, it's shocking. It's a scandal. They spend almost no money compared to a chemical company which spends $4 or $5 million doing tests to see if this causes problems.
This is an experiment. It's not a product registration. I know of no experiment in agriculture that has ever been exposed to such extensive review.
As you might expect, Advanced Genetic Sciences disagrees not enough tests were done. After years of lab and greenhouse work, they claim to have satisfied the needs of an EIR because of a federally required experimental permit.
These are extremely extensive, much more extensive than is required in an environmental impact report, and they essentially suffice, or in fact are more compelling than compiling an environmental impact report.
Nonetheless, despite AGS claims and arguments by scientists even out on the street, these groups will file a suit to block the test in Sacramento Wednesday and will give their petitions to county supervisors to consider. But unless that works,
we believe we have a significant and a compelling public support for this experiment, and we intend to continue and go ahead with it.
And with it, a new era of science or fear could start by this Friday. I'm Bill Van Amberg, Channel 7 News, East Bay Bureau.
Now, just to clarify here for those not familiar with all of this, the makers of the Frostban bacteria believe it will substantially reduce frost damage in crops, perhaps saving millions of dollars a year if applied all over. As we said, the protests are nothing new on this issue, but it has always been very difficult to get a handle on precise objections to the test. Do they want genetic experimentation banned, period? What specifically is the fear? Do they have knowledge of any possible danger? Or is this just an example of what some have been calling, some of those who feel the other way have been calling simply an anti-scientific fashion? With us is Andy Caffrey of the Berkeley Greens, precisely as possible. Andy, what is it that you fear here, as precisely as possible?
Well, there are a number of things. We're primarily concerned about health effects of this bacteria getting out in the environment. The bacteria they start with is known to cause disease in people with impaired immune systems. If they are playing around with this bacteria, and part of the bacteria that the body uses to recognize invading bacteria, this could be a greater risk to AIDS victims, people undergoing chemotherapy, and almost anybody with a severe immune system problem.
Andy, specifically, those are all sorts of things that are going to get some people who do not know about this specifically very, very upset. Are you essentially saying you don't ever want this kind of thing done outside of a laboratory?
No, what's happened is that AGS has gone out to the farmers and told them that this product would be very useful. Then they've turned around and told the EPA they don't have any plans to market it. As a result, the EPA gave them an exemption from doing animal tests to determine the possible health effects on humans and animals. If you look in that experimental use permit, you will find no tests on animals.
We're also hearing things from people, letters and so on, of people who obviously know absolutely nothing about this, and that's the basis of their fear. They're saying things like, what happens if I eat strawberries after they've been treated like this? Again, has that something to do with the kind of rhetoric that's been earlier in the piece we saw, shocking and scandalous, in reference to the tests that have not been done?
Well, it is shocking and scandalous. This is the beginning of a whole new industry that's as profound as the nuclear power industry. It's taken 40 years for us to win any kind of safeguards at all for nuclear power. At the beginning of that industry, we were told it would be too cheap to meter, that it was a clean alternative to fossil fuels, and right now we're just being told about the wonderful things about genetic engineering. I'm always suspicious when I hear nothing is wrong with something, and that's what the people in the government, the people with AGS have been telling the people in this community, and we've discovered that the people in the community are very concerned, and they want information from people who oppose this.
One last question to you. Do you know of any parallel between, say, the concerns about radioactivity and this? In other words, what is a parallel in your mind that has you this upset?
Well, the problem is you're dealing with something that is going to go anywhere it wants to go in nature. It reproduces, it mutates. Radiation doesn't even do that. What they are doing is they're saying we have models about how this works in the environment, and basically the accuracy of the models is my concern. These people do not, they cannot take all of nature and compress it down to models. This stuff will do what it wants to do, and I'm very concerned when the EPA says we don't have the technology yet to monitor this stuff, yet they're going to release it anyways.
Andy Caffrey, again from the Berkeley Greens. You hear that side of the story. You've heard the company side of the story as well. It is difficult to tell at this point precisely how this will work itself out, or if the tests will begin or not begin.
An experiment that some people applaud and others are afraid of. The genetically altered bacteria Frostban is going to be sprayed on a field in Contra Costa County at dawn tomorrow. Hank Plant is in our newsroom right now with word of the last-minute appeal. Excuse me, Hank.
Wendy, I just got off the phone with some lawyers who oppose the Frostban test. They have just filed papers with the District Court of Appeals in Sacramento asking that the test be put off at least for a few days. That could give them enough time to get another judge to look at the case. Right now, no one knows if the court will act on that appeal in time to stop the release of the bacteria that some believe may lead to potentially harmful new life forms.
This small field, 30 miles east of Oakland, looks more like a laboratory than a strawberry patch. As well it should. Scientific history will be made here Friday morning as researchers finally get to conduct the world's first open-air spraying of genetically altered bacteria. The EPA has already set up air monitoring equipment, watching for any effects other than what Frostban is supposed to do, reduce the effect of frost on crops. Today in a Sacramento courtroom, environmentalists who have been fighting the test lost their last chance to have it stopped.
This court is convinced that respondents are not unleashing some deleterious bacteria that's going to consume the city of Brentwood or anything else.
It was a long-awaited victory for genetic researchers from Oakland-based Advanced Genetic Sciences who have always maintained Frostban's safety.
We wouldn't be proceeding with this line of research if we felt it was a hazard.
The environmentalists who lost lashed out at the court, the state, and the EPA for approving the test.
I don't feel protected at all by the EPA. I think they're going to be as ineffective at protecting us from this industry as the IRS is at catching tax evaders.
For the scientists, this could be the end of a long battle. They've been trying to conduct an open-air test of Frostban for nearly 2 years.
And as we said, there is still a chance the test won't happen tomorrow morning. The people who oppose Frostban are waiting for word right now that the appeals court might hear their case and rule in their favor, but that decision has to come within the next 12 hours. That's it from the newsroom. I'm Hank Plant. Wendy, back to you.
Okay, Hank, thanks.
We're certainly concerned and involved with the knowledge of just how dangerous some of these products may be. Today, as we saw that footage, we saw somebody in a full chemical suit. What is the danger of spraying Frostban?
The regulatory process, which has gone on for 3 or 4 years on this particular test, has indicated that there is no danger from this test. In fact, the Judge Lewis in Sacramento yesterday determined again, this was the second judge that determined the subject, that there is no credible evidence of any danger from this product to animals, plants, or humans, or the environment.
Thank you. Peter Staple is Associate General Counsel of the CETUS Corporation, and as you can see, there is a plan. It's a question of precisely where it will go, and there will obviously be a lot of contention over this as the steps take place.
Well, and it seems confusing, too, to say that there's no danger, and then you see somebody wearing that kind of a protective suit.
Right.
But we'll have more on this, of course.
Man-made bacteria. Will it prevent killing frosts? History was made in California today when a liquid was sprayed on some strawberry plants. The liquid contained a bacteria that had been genetically altered in a laboratory to make strawberries grow better, or keep them from freezing at least. It's the first time a man-made bacteria has been released into the environment. Its backers say the potential benefits are enormous. Other folks warn it's a threat to public health. In California, here's ABC's Ken Kashiwahara.
It is called Frostban, a man-made bacteria sprayed on strawberry plants designed to prevent crop damage during freezing weather. And while protective suits were worn for today's test, officials said it was strictly precautionary.
This experiment poses no threat to the environment, no threat to animals, plants, or most importantly to human beings.
Frostban was developed in a laboratory using a process called gene splicing, changing a natural bacteria into a man-made organism that lowers the freezing point of whatever it's sprayed on. Scientists say it is a non-toxic alternative to smudge pots, burning tires, and chemicals which farmers currently use during cold weather. It took 3.5 years for scientists to get to this strawberry patch to obtain approval from the courts and federal and state agencies to tamper with Mother Nature. But some opponents argue that the bacteria could multiply, could run wild, causing unpredictable changes in the environment.
These people, they're mad scientists. They really are.
There's only a small chance that this organism will do damage.
But if it does do damage, the event can be catastrophic.
Still, the experiment, if successful, could lead to other genetically altered substances, replacing toxic pesticides, for example.
I don't like using pesticides because they're dangerous, you know, and I'd like to get away from those, and if they ever came out with a product like that, it'd be super.
So if scientists determine that the genetically altered bacteria work, it could dramatically alter the future of farming. Ken Kashiwahara, ABC News, Brentwood, California.
A torn fence and 2,200 plants ripped from their roots for not an auspicious beginning to a scientific first, the release of a genetically altered bacteria into an open field. Scientist Julie Lindemann was clearly anxious to get on with the test.
For the next 6 weeks, there's going to be a lot of work, but it'll be satisfying to be able to do science instead of working on lawsuits.
Overnight, vandals had ripped out 80% of the young strawberry plants in the 1/5 acre test plot. A few could not be replanted. Scientists are examining the effects of a laboratory-created mutant bacteria, nicknamed Frostban. It occurs in nature, but in very minute quantities. When sprayed on laboratory plants, it inhibits frost and prevents its formation down to much lower than usual temperatures. It had never been tested in the open. Government observers blanketed the strawberry patch with 200 detection devices to monitor any contamination. Frost is American agriculture's #1 pest. Frost damage costs U.S. farmers $1.5 billion per year. Biotechnology critics called Frostban a disaster. They fear the mutant may thrive in nature and disrupt rainfall patterns or pose long-term health risks to humans. Only one protester showed up at Friday's sunrise test. He was promptly ejected.
Until you have a Bhopal or Chernobyl, you can't stop things like this.
This experiment poses no threat to the environment, no threat to animals, plants, or most importantly to human beings.
The treated leaves and blossoms will not be examined for frost resistance in the field, but will be hauled off to a laboratory where scientists will induce frost conditions and test the bacteria's survival rate. First commercial use, at least 3 years away. As anxious as scientists are to remove chemicals from food, skeptics are wondering if altering the biology of the food is the right substitute. Greg Lefebvre, CNN, Brentwood, California.
Up next, the furor over Frostban and a look ahead at the future of genetic engineering. New, really, about the fear of science, the human resistance to scientific experimentation, but the fuss over a genetically engineered material called Frostban has been exceptional, even for these times. After years of preparation in the lab and years of contention in courts, Frostban was sprayed on a Contra Costa County strawberry field today. It is the first ever test of a genetically altered material outside a lab. But as Bill Van Amberg explains, there is such a thing as strawberry patch vandalism.
The dawn hours were frantic ones at the Brentwood test site this morning. Workers in darkness replanting strawberries that had been ripped out of the ground or had their leaves and blossoms stripped from them. Bins holding separate monitoring plants also dumped, all by vandals who had cut their way into the site. The overnight vandalism was certainly disturbing and did do some damage, but it didn't succeed in blocking the test, only delaying it for about an hour.
So I won't suit up till I do go in there with you, so I'll wait till you come out.
Right, I'll come out. Totally.
And the scientist directing the spraying, Dr. Julianne Lindemann, had worked too long towards this test for almost anything to stop it.
I just felt determined to go ahead. It didn't really faze me that much. We just got in there and started putting them back in. It's the end of a lot of things other than science and the beginning of being able to do experiments, which is what we really have been wanting to do all along.
Still, outside the site fence, there was one last protest. This man, escorted off the field by deputies. Andy Caffrey has been one of the altered bacteria test's biggest critics and sided with the vandals.
I fully support people doing this. They've waited for the courts to respond, and you have a bunch of judges who are ignorant. I mean, it's a travesty that judges would have to decide something like this.
But the EPA, State Food and Agriculture, and local officials also agreed with yesterday's court decision, finally allowing the carefully monitored test. And at last, at 6:47 this morning, history was made. The first genetically altered life form was released into the environment, albeit a hardly changed bacteria. But the precedent of today may go far beyond any benefit this particular frost-stopping creature has.
I think the underlining most significant factor is the demonstration that the industry can work with the agencies and then go through the public process using the media and public forums to inform the public so that there is a public acceptance of this kind of activity.
An activity that will be testing Frostban's safety and use over the next few weeks and may also have overseen the dawning of a new day in science. In Brentwood, I'm Bill Van Amberg, Channel 7 News, East Bay Bureau.
Activists have sabotaged an experiment to genetically create a bacteria that prevents frost damage in plants. Members of two ecology groups, Earth First and Genetic Alert, spread salt, ammonia, and herbicides on strawberries treated with the bacteria. The attack took place at the headquarters of Advanced Genetic Sciences in Brentwood. AGS claims the bacteria will aid crops, not harm people or the environment. Earth First says the experiments are bacteriological warfare being conducted against an unwitting public.
With the birth of this industry, there are absolutely no opportunities for the public to have its wishes upheld by the people perpetrating this. And because of that, people have to resort to these kinds of tactics.
We'll have more in a minute for you, live at 5.
Fly's product developed to protect plants against cold will proceed despite a sabotage attempt on Monday. Frostban's maker, Advanced Genetic Sciences, said salt and ammonia sprayed onto its strawberry patch slowed but didn't stop research on Frostban. A group calling itself Mindless Thugs Against Genetic Engineering claimed responsibility for the vandalism. It said the test bacteria needs more testing itself.
At 10 o'clock news, the government issues its air travel scorecard for October, and San Francisco Airport gets a big F.
And someone has sabotaged the latest experiment with a man-made life form. Those stories when Dennis and I come back. Applauded today an act of sabotage in Contra Costa County and said there will be more. Thanks to that act, an Oakland company had to postpone its test today on genetically altered bacteria. Randy Shandeville reports.
This fenced-in acre of mud in Brentwood, 45 miles east of San Francisco, has become an intense battlefield. Radical environmentalists shooting it out with genetic engineers who are trying to come up with new ways to protect food crops from frost damage. Today, activist members of Earth First boasted of their latest sneak attack. Andy Caffrey read what he said was a communique that had been slipped under his door.
In the early hours of Monday, November 30th, beneath blinding spotlights, under the noses of two guards, and despite an 8-foot-high fence, we entered the test site. The strawberry plants were completely covered with 250 pounds of salt and a large fire extinguisher full of ammonia.
The activists have vandalized this strawberry patch before and vow to again. They say that by testing new man-made bacteria out in the open, Advanced Genetic Sciences is exposing the world to possible unknown diseases and mutations.
Going forward with these kind of tests is similar to going forward with nuclear power when all you have are Geiger counters to measure the results.
Of course I'm angry about it, but I try not to take it personally.
Trevor Suslow of Advanced Genetic Sciences says the vandalism will delay his company's next experiment, which was scheduled for today, but not cancel it. The Oakland company first sprayed Frostban earlier this year, but the test results were not conclusive, in part because of earlier vandalism. There is security here, but why not more?
I really don't want to have to try and conduct my experiments inside a Stalag 13 type of atmosphere.
Earth First activists say the salt and herbicides they dumped here will slowly kill the plants and ruin the experiment. But today, company officials tried to limit the damage by washing the plants off with sprinklers. They say if the vandalism continues, they may be forced to try their experiments overseas. But members of Earth First say it doesn't matter where the experiments are conducted. If Frostban is tested in Australia or Italy, activists say they'll go there to try to disrupt the experiments. In Brentwood, Randy Shandeville for the 10 o'clock news.
Environmental activists today say that they applaud the sabotaging of a strawberry patch in Brentwood, which is a test site for genetically altered bacteria. The second test of Frostban was disrupted by people who call themselves Mindless Thugs Against Genetic Engineering and Earth First. A member of Earth First, who claims he had no advance notice of the vandalism, today read a communique from the responsible parties. Channel 7's Carolyn Tyler was there.
Bright lights didn't stop them, guards didn't deter them. An 8-foot-high fence couldn't keep militant environmentalists from sneaking onto this Brentwood strawberry field Monday morning and effectively delaying today's Frostban bacteria test.
The strawberry plants were completely covered with 250 pounds of salt and a large fire extinguisher full of ammonia. In addition, an unidentified, slow-acting herbicide was randomly applied.
A sprinkler system is going full tilt, trying to dilute the stuff. As much as 70% of the crop may have been affected. Advanced Genetic Sciences, the Oakland company, which has federal and state approval, is trying to test the ability of its genetically altered bacteria to prevent frost buildup on plants.
All of the evidence available shows that this is an environmentally safe type of experiment to be conducting. These organisms are not dangerous in and of themselves, and nothing about the simple removal of one gene responsible for this ice-forming protein has changed that.
But critics call it genetically engineered madness and disrupted the first experiment on the Brentwood strawberries last April by pulling up most of the plants. This time the sabotage was more destructive.
People who did this, I presume, feel so strongly that this industry is just going to roll over communities, that we're going to have future Chernobyls and Bhopals, that they felt that at this point in time it's worth putting a small amount of an herbicide on land that's already had herbicides put on it.
There's no damage visible at this point, but it will take a few days before it would show up.
If the damage to these strawberry plants isn't too extensive and the corrective measures work, then Advanced Genetic Sciences could be ready as early as Friday or Monday to try the testing again. But repeated resistance to the Frostban testing could force the company to take the experiments out of the state or even out of the country. Australia is one place that they're looking at. But the environmental activists say they have people in Australia and they'll try the same kinds of tactics there. In Brentwood, Carolyn Tyler, Channel 7 News.
Well, joining us live to talk about the controversy over Frostban and the tactics being used by the environmental activists is Andy Caffrey. Andy, as we explained a moment ago, is a member of the group Earth First and a founder of the group called Genetic Alert. Do you agree with what was done today, Mr. Caffrey?
You mean what was done Monday? Yes, I do.
There are many people who are probably watching this tonight who say, what gives you the right to make a choice like this? This is not the way things are supposed to work in this society.
Well, I would say what gives a company, what gives a university a right to release a genetically engineered organism into a community which has no say in what goes on?
Well, wait a minute. There has been say, though. Didn't this case get approved by the EPA, and didn't it go to the California Supreme Court, and wasn't this activity approved already in our own system?
Well, the EPA and the CDFA, that's the California Department of Food and Agriculture, have approved this test. But there's no way that if everyone in the city of Brentwood opposed this test, that their opposition would affect these decisions. This is not a democratic kind of system which they're using. I talked to Julio Calderon of CDFA, and he said that even if all of the residents of Brentwood opposed this test and sent letters during the public comment period, that unless they introduced some new scientific evidence, it didn't matter how they felt. If they were just concerned about the unknown risks of this test, that wasn't enough.
Mr. Caffrey, the fact is that there are no recorded unknown risks to this test. Isn't that actually the case? It is not so much this test, but perhaps future tests that you're concerned about?
Well, no, I'm very concerned about this organism. They've bred their organism to be resistant to antibiotics. Viruses can take that resistance, pull it out of their bacteria, and put it in some other bacteria that could be a bigger problem.
What is your scientific background?
I'm not a scientist. I have some background in college and science. I was planning to become a marine biologist, but I realized that being a scientist wasn't what was needed. We needed people to communicate what was going on.
In other words, you simply don't trust what these scientists say.
No, and I know they're lying. They said that this organism was not going to escape from the test site. They said it would go 1 or 2 feet into the dirt barrier, and it was a 50-foot barrier, and now the EPA has released results that it did in fact escape.
Well, they disagree with the size of that test site, I know.
The size of the test site?
Your idea of the test site is a smaller portion than what they say the test site is.
Well, the test site was a 90-foot square patch of strawberries surrounded by a 50 to 90-foot dirt barrier.
I understand that. I just want our audience to know that they have a different perception of what that test site was that was approved, and they say it was larger than what you're saying. So they would dispute your contention that it went beyond the test site. Well, I'm just putting in their side since they are not here to do it for themselves.
Well, Trevor Suslow was quoted last week in the Brentwood News as saying that they found Frostban outside the test site on a patch of weeds.
All right, unfortunately, we're going to have to wrap up the discussion at this point. We thank you for joining us. A lot of viewers interested in why this is happening.
There will be a good deal more on it, we expect, in the days ahead.
KTVU, Channel 2, Oakland, Wednesday, December 2nd, 1987, 2 at noon.
Radical environmentalists this morning claimed responsibility for sabotaging a new outdoor test of a genetically altered bacteria. The loosely knit group called Earth First says that early Monday morning several people poured salt and ammonia on an experimental strawberry patch near Brentwood. The Oakland-based company Advanced Genetic Sciences planned to spray the plants today with Frostban, a genetically altered bacteria that may help crops resist frost. Earth First says the company's open-air experiments present unforeseen dangers to the environment.
You promised us that Frostban would not escape from the Brentwood test site, yet it did. You persist in a cover-up of these results. We consider your actions acts of bacteriological warfare waged on an unwitting public, and we pledge to resist you tooth and nail. This is not a threat of violence against people.
Advanced Genetic Sciences this morning postponed the test, citing the vandalism and the weather as reasons for the delay. The company defends the safety of the tests, and a representative told us that further experiments are planned.